All right, guys, today we're going to try to talk conceptually about square roots. We've used them a little bit with our Pythagorean theorem that you did last week. I know it's been a couple of days since we've had math, but we're going to go ahead and try to move forward. So we are in our books. We're in lesson 2 of module 7, page 15. If you want to go ahead and turn to that. What we're going to be looking at is just, again, talking through the concept of square root, which we know is the opposite of squaring something. The inverse operation. So the first question says, determine the positive square root of 81 if it exists. Now, they stress positive because with every positive number, there are two potential square roots. We're just going to focus on the positives for right now. So first, we see the number 81. We think, is there a number that when squared equals 81? And if you hopefully can still remember all the perfect squares that we did earlier in the year, which you guys did a great job on that test, we know that the square root of 81 is 9. And the rationale behind that is that because 9 squared equals 81. So this is kind of just reversing what you did earlier in the year with our squares. Number 2 says, determine the positive square root of 225, and if it exists, explain. So we could say again that the square root, I'm abbreviating there, of 225 is 15. Because 15 squared equals 225. Okay, now we look at number 3, the positive square root of negative 36. And we have to think again that squares tell us that a number multiplied by itself will give us the square of that number. So when we say with a square root, we're thinking of what number multiplied by itself will give us negative 36. And if we remember our multiplication of positive and negative number rules, if we have a positive times a positive, that's going to give us a positive result. If we have a negative times a negative, that's going to give us a positive result. And when we talk about square roots, we're talking about what number times itself. So we have to have one of these two things has to be true for it to be a square. And we can see that in both cases, they're going to end up with a positive result. So we would say negative 36 does not have a positive square root. And in fact, as we look at our rules, any negative number does not have a positive square root. So let's look at number 4. Number 4 says determine the positive square root of 49. And we can say from our memory that the square root of 49 is 7 because 7 squared equals 49. So again, that's just kind of what we're working on. The questions you'll have to do will be a little bit of that. Now we have this number line. And what we want to see here is on this number line, we want to place what the square root is that would equal these whole numbers here. So in other words, to get 1, we would say the square root of 1 gives me 1. To get a total of 2, we'd say the square root of 4 gives me 2. To get 3, we'd say the square root, messed up on my square root symbol there. The square root of 9 gives me 3, and the square root of 16 gives me 4. Now, what we're going to see, and as we saw a little bit on the first assignment that you did last week, is that sometimes we have numbers that don't have perfect squares, and they're going to fit somewhere in here. So we know that if between 1 and 2, we have the numbers, the square root of 1 and 4, then we know that between these two, we're going to find the square roots of 2 and 3. So I can go ahead and put a couple dots here. I'm going to call this the square root of 2, and this the square root of 3. We don't have to know the exact numbers, but we can just see conceptually that that's where those numbers are going to fit. Same thing here. If we know that between numbers 2 and 3, we have the square roots of 4 and the square root of 9, then we're going to have other spots in here. Six, 7, 8. So we'd say this would be the square root of 5, square root of 6, square root of 7, and the square root of 8. Those numbers all fit between 2 and 3 on the number line. And likewise, if I were to put dots here, I'd have the square root of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 would all fit between 3 and 4. So in other words, if I asked you to find a number and your end result when you used your calculator, if I said, what's the square root of 12, you'd find that it's somewhere between 3 and 4. You can, again, know that number, it's the square root of 12, is going to be between those two pieces. Your homework, or the work that you're going to do on your own, I guess this is all homework at this point, will be exercises 5 through 9. You can either do it on the formative, you could do it on paper, take a picture of it, send it to me. Either way works. I'll link it here, but you're going to basically determine the positive square root of these numbers. If it's not a perfect square, I want you to tell me which whole number it's closest to. And then you can use your calculator to find these, and you can tell me which whole number it's closest to. And I want you to answer question number 9 as well. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Make sure you're keeping up on your work. Miss seeing you guys and hope to talk to you all soon.